All right, good evening, everybody. System Chalk here for the 199th episode of Book of Hours, our first run through YouTube. And I need to do a little bit of a PSA, also explaining why I am currently opening something that had zero point 0.4 seconds to go in the in the previous episode. So I recorded a bunch of episodes at the beginning of the month, anticipating that I would kind of need my weekends for something else, and that paid off. But for the Friday episode, I didn't quite finish recording in time, and there was a specific thing that was kind of a dependency that I hadn't finished yet. So I think I've got a good start on that dependency, but I am actually recording this on the morning of the video that it's supposed to go in. Essentially, I didn't get any sleep the night before, and so I drifted off, and I've sort of woken up. The sun's just getting up, and I sort of realized I don't have any time left. I'm kind of counting this very narrow window that I have between finishing the recording now and going to work. So I will have this ready to go for tonight, but there is an unfortunate reality that YouTube does sometimes take some time to process these videos, and so it may mean that by the time it's ready to go at 6:30 tonight, it may still be processing. So with that in mind, if you happen to be watching this the day that the video becomes available, or maybe a day after, if it's not at the full resolution and you would like to watch it at the full resolution, the best I can only really offer here is to save the page and come back. I don't have any control over that other than getting the videos uploaded well in advance, and I do apologize, but we are at least here for today's episode. Now, I recorded a whole bunch of stuff to begin with, or thought I was recording a whole bunch of stuff, wasn't recording, so I'm kind of repeating myself here, but essentially I just passed the time a little bit because I'm going to make some fairly big decisions for this playthrough in a little bit, but what I would like to have is actually all of my elements of the soul ready to go before I or not elements of the soul, skills ready to go before I do this. And I'm trying to remember why I was looking at this painting. So we've got the Mansus. There have been many attempts to depict the House of the Sun. This, by the visionary painter known only as the Magyar, is the best known. It's signed and dated. If it's really the original, it must count as one of the great treasures of the house. Beneath the skin of the world, we find the Mansus, also called the World Spine, also called the House of the Sun. The Mansus is the home of the hours on which the world depends, and a sojourning place for certain departed souls. Above the house is the glory, the origin of light, to which souls aspire. At the foot of the house, and around its walls, though it has no walls, is the wood. Beneath the house is nowhere. So we have sight for this. Now, this strikes me as the sort of thing where I would be building towards something. So I've got a health set aside and I've got a Faust set aside. But the funny thing is I don't have any lessons learned set aside. So I'm wondering why I was accumulating all of this stuff, especially with, having a fog and so on and so forth. And I'm a little perplexed. Okay, so I'm also restoring a tryst. And it could just be that I'm restoring all of this stuff so that I can read more books. I'm certainly not going to complain about doing that. I just want to maybe make sure that I'm not signing myself up for some disappointment. I think I'm going to treat it like I wanted to... Yeah, so we've got water coming up. We're restoring the tryst. I think I'm going to say we'll treat this like I wanted to keep reading. So, I believe, so we've got green jade tablet, white jade tablet, silver book, prisoner records. So I think we're on to the 26 enticement, 7 torments. That's a few scene text. I have already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. Okay. And then with the health, I think I was originally going to set this aside for more gathering, but I don't have enough time. So I suppose I could try and get something from a walk on the moor. Well, among other places. But let's... I think we're just going to keep reading. I may have had other decisions that I was trying to do, but at this point I think I'm going to commit to getting a little bit more done in terms of learning about the world. So the most sorrowful end of the Lady Nona. And then when the tryst comes, same story, we'll have that turned into knowledge. So there is a plan in terms of today, but I do want to make sure that I have herbs and infusions. It may not be necessary for what I'm working on, but today the plan is to actually commit some things to the Tree of Wisdoms. I know this has been coming... I mean, it's been building up for a while to a point where it almost feels unimportant because we've already unlocked the whole house and we're really just waiting on a language right now. But one thing that will be nice about having some extra elements of the soul is that we'd be able to read more books. And then as a practical matter, if I'm going to be leveling up some skills, I've got a very lopsided skill tree right now, and this is one of the consequences of me leveling things all the way up to 9 and then moving on to some of the lower level ones, is that I actually have a strange path through the Tree of Wisdoms based on what's there, and I'm likely going to want to upgrade a few skills before I finish my path through the Tree of Wisdoms. But I have, unlike maybe previous runs, maybe runs isn't the term that I'm looking for, but in this particular case, I do actually have a bit of a game plan in terms of how I'm going to go through the Tree of Wisdoms. When I first played, the first victory I got, I didn't plan the Tree of Wisdoms at all. And so where there was this sort of weak preference to have the max, to sort of be the best in every, or get to level 9 in every branch of the Tree of Wisdoms, I actually sort of locked myself out of a couple of those paths without having to spend a whole lot of time upgrading. So that may still be the case for this run, but I would like to make a little bit more of a conscious effort to make that path easier for myself. And so I may not get everything committed, but I want to at least sort of make a real effort at, I don't know, getting a bit more of a foundation down than what I wanted. And I'll talk a little bit about sort of the overall plan that I have for the tree. So I've already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. Now, before I do any of that, we are still waiting on Crowcross Sands, so I've got about a minute to go there, and we'll have some books to read in the meantime. The 26 Enticements, 7 Torments. The painter Niels Friedrich Malsker notoriously attempted a series of paintings based on the torments. By the 5th torment, the demand of the painting had grown so dire that he died of blood loss. The diagrams in this text are thankfully less detailed. The enticements of the Grail outnumber its torments, but its torments are its final nature. Birth is the first torment, and thirst the 7th. Through the enumeration of the Grail's enticements and torments winds the sorrowful history of the witches of the dry land, the ordeal of birth from 2 wombs, their struggle from the supplication of the Grail, the yearning for union which drives them all. And looks like there isn't a memory in here, so I'm going to guess that was overtaken by The Most Sorrowful End of the Lady Nona, an unauthorized account of the death of Abbess Nona, written by Eusebia, one of the 2 sisters accused of having murdered Nona through poisoning and arts unsanctioned. Eusebia, awaiting execution, intends to hide this account in her cell. Nona has introduced Yusiba to an unsanctioned Thunderskin cult, which meets in the caves below the abbey. There she and others perform sacred dances for the preservation of the kingdom. Yusiba claims that Nona asked her and another sister to prepare her a lethe draft, which can be brewed from another beverage with herbs and infusions techniques and a sufficient quantity of nectar, for a rite that all three of them would perform below the abbey. Something goes awry. Nona is possessed of a tenebrous spirit, and the abbey brethren are forced to quell her with star iron. The other two are implicated as scapegoats. Yusiba implies, although she acknowledges her fault also. So sorry, number one, it's still a little early for me, so I'm stumbling over my words as usual. One thing I am intrigued about in here, so lethe draft for a rite all of them would perform below the abbey. And when they talk about sacred dances, I can't imagine... So the sort of thing I'm thinking of here would be like you kind of have a bit of an indication that there might be something to that. So if you do something like, say, a drums and dances and a lethe, although I don't think the lethe would count. Yeah. I suppose I would need to find the drums and dances area that would accept a liquid. So it seems sort of it's like almost on the verge of being something that seems like a hint, but I think the bigger hint in there is just how to actually make the draft itself. Anyways. The goal is still the Tree of Wisdom, so I'm going to wait for the skill, and then we can do more interesting things. There is another thing that I want to work on, which is if my main option in terms of leveling up skills is going to be breaking them down and building them back up in Numa, I might want to keep like a level 4 or level 5 just hanging around to make sure that I'm still able to just to make sure that I'm able to get the levels that I need. I think at this point don't need any more sand. Okay. The magic time has arrived. So, previously we committed things to the Tree of Wisdoms to just get ourselves some elements of the soul. To a certain extent, I would wish I could sort of undo a few of these, but I'm not going to get too fussed about it. So, the Horamachistry is okay. Oh, this is funny. I always thought this was a House of Light thing. Maybe not. But yeah, so we've got Horamachistry is kind of fine the way that it is. I have something in Ithistry which I wouldn't have put in. I have something in Birdsong that I wouldn't have put in. Probably something in Preservation that I wouldn't have put in. And I think Nyctodromy as well. And of course, Nyctodromy has 2 elements, or has 2 skills inside of it. So, the deal with the Tree of Wisdoms is this. You cannot put, so far as I can tell, there are not enough skills in the game, including languages, to put one in everything. There are achievements for getting things into level 9, which is why I'm sort of tempted to do that. And one path that I've worked out, which takes 55 skills, is to put sort of 1 through 9 into Horamachistry. And then what you do from Horamachistry is you move over to Ithistry for 5 to 9. So in this case, Kernwek Hanavek is sort of adding something that we don't really need there. Likewise, for Horamachistry, you move into Birdsong, and then for Birdsong, you go through 5 through 9. Now, this playthrough, I'd sort of say I am a Bosky artist. Normally I'd go 1 through 9, except that we've already put in preservation. So in this case here, I would start at 2 and then move up for Bosk. So normally I'd do Bosk 1 through 9. This is if I'm looking at a blank Tree of Wisdoms. But in this case, Bosk 1 through 9. In this case, Bosk 2 through 9. Then it would be preservation 5 through 9. So again, the 1 in preservation is technically unnecessary. And then Skolakosophy, because we would already have the point in Bosk, we would actually go 2 through 9 there. Of course, we already have Kilisimi in. So 2 through 9 for Skolakosophy. Nyctodromy is a bit of a weird one. So from the Skolakosophy, you go 7 through 9, but you also go back down to so that you can get to Hushery. Although in this case, it seems to make more sense to just spend the 2 to go up to Nyctodromy 4 here. And then from there, you can get Hushery 5 through 9. And from Hushery 5 through 9, you can get Illumination 7 through 9. So that's roughly the plan here. So it's not exactly going to follow this, and it means that I'm going to have committed more elements of the soul than, more skills than what I would normally go for. But I think it's still a fair enough. I think we're in a decent enough place to get something meaningful done. Now, another thing that I want to keep a track of. Now, this is more just sort of a flourish rather than something necessary. But it would also be kind of nice to be a good manager in terms of the elements of the soul. So I'm just opening up a notepad here. So what I'm thinking of here is, if possible, it would be nice to get these things leveled up to an even higher level. If I recall correctly, we're still reading one more book. Yeah. So right now we have 2 Whist, 2 Whist, 2 Fet, 2 Trist, 1 Faust, 1 Core, technically 3 Arab, 1 Shapt, 1 Health. So if you want to go to a plus Arab, let's say, you need 2 Arab. If you want a plus Arab, you need 2 plus Arabs. So in that case, you basically need a total of 4 Arab to get there. And if you want the triple plus Arab, you need 2 of those, which means in total you need 8 to get sort of the maximum element of the soul. Now, again, this is just showing off. It's not necessary to complete the game to have these pluses. But it would be a nice little goal to say, okay, so, if I can get 6 Whist, 6 Fet, 6 Trist, 7 Faust, 7 Core, 5 more Arab, 7 Shapt, and 7 Health, that would be sort of a nice to have in terms of the overall plan. And I did actually take some time to work this out in terms of the Tree of Wisdom. So the way I've sort of figured this is there's sort of trade-offs between the different branches. So I think it goes like with Whist you can get that from Hushery and Ithistry. With Trist, that's between Hushery and Birdsong. And so if you have to make some sort of decisions between those two, you can kind of adjust accordingly. I did also take a quick note in terms of the notes that I jotted down. In terms of each individual branch, you've got anywhere between 16 to 17 skills that you can put in. And then in terms of each of the elements of the soul, I noticed that metal is a little bit harder to come by, as is Shapt at 15. And then the easier one to come by is Trist, which is 18. But you're looking anywhere between 15 to 16. So essentially, you have almost twice as much as what you quote unquote need. And again, there's other ways you can sort of get tripped up in terms of the Tree of Wisdoms. I expect, because I'm not, like, I could sit down and like fully plan all of this out over the course of, you know, a few streams, but we've already kind of taken up all the time preparing for this. So what I wanted to do here was just sort of give some reasoning, get the books that I wanted read, and then I want to try and do what I think are the most straightforward, like, no matter what happens, this was something that I was going to commit to choices right now. And then we can decide whether or not we want to go any further before the next season. But what this is ultimately going to do is this is going to prepare me for Numa, where if we're in a situation where I want to break down one of my skills and rebuild them, I'm going to have a better idea in terms of what elements of the soul I need, and then also I'm going to be able to... I'm going to have a better idea of what skills I want to level up, and I'm going to have more elements of the soul to be able to kind of play around with a few of these skills in terms of breaking them down and building them up again. So, the best place for me to start, I think, is Horamachistry. So we've already got 2 elements of the soul committed, and in this case here, what I can do is I can say, all right, we've got Horamachistry, I've got some options in terms of, level 3 skills. Also, the level 3 ones are the ones I'd prefer not to think of too much. So I have, in fact, I do have a spreadsheet on the other screen working with this too. So if I highlight the 3s that I have under Horamachistry, so we've got Oronoscopy and Anbury and Lapidary. Now, Anbury and Lapidary will also give me, has an option for Ithistry, and then Oronoscopy goes to Hushery. So technically, both of these would give me something that in terms of Hushery or or Ithistry, I wouldn't normally have used either of those in terms of the build-up. So, with that in mind, we'll maybe see if there's something in the descriptions or the elements of the soul that I get that lead me towards one or the other. So Anbury and Lapidary, lightning is a little life and jewels are its eyes. Ava DeWolf. So we have Black Sapphire. The bright arts speak of a shining city unbuilt. One day we might build it in the Mansus, the great house of dreams, with a foundation stone of black sapphire. This would be a great matter of Horamachistry. Or... Ithistry, sorry. Amber. The bright arts speak of a shining city unbuilt. One day we might build it like a jewel in the sea with a foundation stone of amber. This would be a great work of Ithistry. Okay, and our options would be Oronoscopy, so the one we're potentially giving up is Wisdom. If the stars are wisdom, then dawn is ignorance. A day might come when there is no dawn. Oronoscopy should be numbered among the night arts. Peace. If night is peace, then dawn is battle. When the sun drives the stars from the sky, a day might come when the sun's victory is not assured. The battles of heaven are a matter of Horamachistry. I think I'm going to settle for Anbury and Lapidary in here. So, Bright Sapphire. The bright arts speak of a shining city unbuilt. One day we might build it in the Mansus, the great house of dreams, with a foundation stone of black sapphire. This would be a great matter of Horamachistry. So there is my Fett. And then we just do this for level 4 as well. So again, remembering that right now our goal is to move up through Horamakastri into, and then branch off into some of these other ones. So my options here are Bells and Braziaries and Sacra Solis Invicti in terms of level 4. I don't want to put anything higher in there just because it's I would prefer to sort of use these. Now, it's also worth remembering that I did say I wanted to hang on to a level 4 or level 5, but that's a temporary thing. I don't want to stick too far with it. I also noticed that Sacra Solis Invicti is, I believe, an Illumination, and Bells and Braziaries, I remember pretty distinctly, is a Horamakastri and Ithistry one. So we're in a similar point to Anbury and Lapidary. So with Bells and Braziaries, that resonance which lingers from the hammer's touch. The toll. In the right mortal's hand, the right tool can become the weapon that begins a war. This is a high consequence of Horamakastri. Or the chime. In the right mortal's hand, the right tool can become the weapon that ends a war. This is a high purpose of Ithistry. So I'm almost certainly going to put in the toll here, but let's see what the results for Sacra Solis Invicti would be. So again, Illumination is something that I'd really only expect to be 7 through 9 here. But we've got the light within. The new king's light is uncertain. The received version of the Book of Suns tells that the sun and splendor will never return. If the king claims otherwise, he leads us astray. We should seek answers in Illumination. Or the light above. The new king's light shines brightly. The sanctioned version of the Book of Suns tells us he may herald the unification of the gods who are light into a new sun and splendor. We should seek answers in Horamakastri. So the toll. In the right mortal's hand, the right tool can become the weapon that begins a war. This is a high consequence of Horamakastri. The reason why I do like holding back a little bit in terms of committing the different skills is that you do get to learn a bit more. It's kind of interesting, and I don't know if the game is really set up this way. I think it is probably more intended to be something that you learn as you go. But there is something interesting about understanding a little bit more about the world as you read the different texts. Just being able to, just trying to keep track of my. Oh, did I forget to write down metal? But yeah, I kind of like the idea of having a little more context when I read these descriptions. And originally I had thought that you were making a choice between 2 possible outcomes in the game. And I actually think in this case, it's more a so after kind of going through the Tree of Wisdoms before, I have a feeling now that probably this is more a little bit about what you sort of think is more primary rather than them being things that change the shape of the world. So I reluctantly must confess that I do think the Mare in the Tree is probably part of the Calyptra. I can never remember. It's, you know what, I'll get this if it's Edicts Inviolable. Mare in the Tree is not the youngest hour, youngest hour of Calyptra, but for she was born many times in many places. The red flower of the Watchman's Tree is the fire fueled by truth. Without it, the tree would fall, as all Horamakasts know. And then I think I get a different flower. What's the other one here? Preservation. So I think this is like the white flower. The velvet is not the oldest hour, but she is the oldest hour of Calyptra. The black flower of the Watchman's Tree is the preservation of secrets, and without it the tree would fall. This is a matter of preservation. So yeah, I think in this case here, I have to confess that the Mare in the Tree is in fact Calyptra, and whatever I commit to the Tree of Wisdoms is not going to change that, but I'll resist. Okay, now this is where things get a little interesting. So we've got Edicts Martial and Edicts Inviolable as my choices for level 5 for Horamakastri. I could put Edicts Inviolable, well, we just talked about that. But we also have Edicts Martial. I don't feel the need to level that up anymore. But the options here, so Edicts Inviolable would potentially be something I put into Preservation. Alternatively, Edict Martial would be something that would be sort of a surplus in Illumination. So there's a weak preference to keeping Edicts Martial in Horamachistry. But as always, we want to see what the results are. So, conflict creates gods. All the hours are defined by their opposition to other hours, just as we are defined by the battles we choose. This is a matter of the Horamachistry wisdom. Or, understanding creates conflict. When we name our differences, we learn our enemies. Where there are no names, there are no enemies. This is a matter of the Illumination wisdom. And then, of course, we did just do the read for Edicts Inviolable, but I'll read it one more time. Fire, the mare in the tree, is not the youngest hour, but she is the youngest of the Calyptra, for she has been born many times in many places. The red flower on the watchman's tree is the fire fueled by truth, and without it the tree would fall, as all Horamachists know. Or, velvet is not the oldest hour, but she is the oldest hour of Calyptra. The black flower on the watchman's tree is the preservation of secrets, and without it the tree would fall. This is a matter of preservation. So, for this character, I am actually slightly inclined towards this choice anyway. It is also more convenient for me, so... Conflict creates gods. All the hours are defined by their opposition to other hours, just as we are defined by the battles we choose. This is a matter of the Horamachistry wisdom. Okay. Again, I'm keeping track of where I'm putting this stuff, just to make sure I'm not getting too much metal or anything else. On we go. So up to level 6 for Horamachistry. Now this one might be where I sort of feel a bit of a... this is kind of where I may feel a bit of the constraint in terms of what my overall goals are. So right now, Drums and Dances is the only Horamachistry wisdom that I have that I could put in number 6. That's assuming that I don't take a higher level, like I've got Inks of Containment, Great Signs, Great Scars, Sacred Lamea, Inks of Power, Door and Wall, Desires and Dissolutions. So between, if we're going 6, 7, 8, 9, obviously I just need 4, and I've got how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to go as far as Horamachistry is concerned. But I don't want to... What I want to do with Horamachistry is, at least, is get these foundations down in terms of the tree, and then I could start thinking, okay, well, where do we go with the Ithistry, right? Like, I know no matter what, I'm going to be committing up to 5 in terms of Horamachistry. And then, so now I can unlock Birdsong if I want to go down that path, or... when it comes to preservation, I'm going to want to put some points into the Bossk to open that up. In fact, as far as Bossk goes, I probably want to take care of 2, 3, and 4. So we'll read the description for Drums and Dances, but I may hold off committing on that because I think it's clear that I'm not really going to be able to do the full tree and have a full episode. So I wanted to at least sort of explain the path through the Tree of Wisdoms, and then when I record over the weekend, I can sort of properly work out the last few steps. So, Drums and Dances is an option. The heart, the thunderskin, the eternal drum that beats to preserve the skin of the world, is a god from flesh, which is to say he was once mortal. But the horned axe, last of the gods from stone, required his death, and so the Grail gave him up, though he loved her. Love is always subject to the will of the hours, as all Horamachists know. I am not inclined to that one, but let's see what the next step is. The root, the thunderskin, the eternal drum that beats to preserve the skin of the world, is a god from flesh, which is to say he was once mortal. He died to preserve the last god from stone. He died for love. He died for necessity. In matters of Bossk, these three are often intertwined. Okay. So this tells me we are done with Horamachistry right now, because I would prefer to keep Drums and Dances in Bossk. So one quick thing I'm going to do here, I was going to say let's just leave that with Horamachistry, but it is worth saying, so remembering what my original goal was, so in terms of sort of the foundational branches for the Tree of Wisdom, so Horamachistry was one, but we've achieved with Horamachistry all of the paths that will unlock the rest of the Tree of Wisdoms for things like Ithistry and Birdsong. So the next step would be to move on to Bosk, and essentially what we want is we want up to Bosk 4. And then as far as enablers are concerned, the only other real one here would probably be Skolakosophy, 2 to 5. Actually, I guess the way that I've worked it out, it'd be Skolakosophy 2 through 5, and then Nyctodromy 3 and 4. Yeah, so I guess the fairest way for me to summarize that actually would be what I probably want to do is take care of Bosk 2, 3, and 4, Skolakosophy 2 through 5, Nyctodromy 3 and 4, and Hushery 5 and 6. But yeah, the one I did want to check out was Bosk 2. Just because if I can save myself a level up for one of those level 2 ones, that just makes my life a little easier. And sadly, there are no Bosk 2s. The best we have is Herbs and Infusions. So I might be willing to do that. Actually, maybe what's worth remembering or noting for myself is that I actually don't have any level 1 Bosks at all. I've got the lowest level Bosk I have right now is Herbs and Infusions, and then Orchids and Narcotics. So this is why I write this stuff down in spreadsheets. It gives me a little more clarity for thinking. But yeah, so that's... I appreciate a little scattered. So my original hope would have been that I could just sort of sit down and have a full episode of just committing things to the Tree of Wisdoms. But there's 2 challenges with that. One, I need to... There's just too much reading, first of all. And then number 2, in order to try and explain some of my reasoning, it's, that just takes time on its own. But there are a few things that are sort of nice and we'll get out of this. So number 1, in this episode, I've roughly explained the overall plan. So again, the spines of the decisions will be Horamachistry, Bosk, Skolakosophy, and then from there we sort of level up the other branches. And then the remaining amounts I'll sort of use to try and fill in the remaining elements of the soul, but that's a nice to have. We're doing this so that I can break up some of the skills and rebuild them. So I do have a little bit of a tension here, right, where I want to keep enough skills uncommitted so that I can sort of get the levels that I need. But that's something I can work out on my own. I don't want to spend too much time talking about that on the stream. And then the last practical matter, while we're trying to work out our last language, Hyksos. Actually, I should see. I don't think Hyksos is Bosk. I think I already committed the Bosky language. Maybe not. Something to think about. But yeah, the other practical advantage is while we're waiting to get our last language, having that many more elements of the soul is something that allows me to read more books. I mean, there will be a limit in terms of the number of desks that I can do this at, but I don't need to worry about restoring things along those lines. So I do apologize. I know for those of you who are looking for a little bit more like advancing of time, we are going to be on a little bit of a dry spell for the next couple of episodes, just because now is the time to sort of work out the Tree of Wisdoms. And to me, this is a game where you don't get to write in your character's name, unlike Cultist Simulator. So the way that I can express the character is through the choices that I make in the Tree of Wisdoms and who I choose to help in terms of the various side stories. So to me, this is the chance to express yourself. I know not everyone is necessarily going to believe that, but I hope I've at least given a sketch. If nothing else, I hope maybe some of you who are trying to make some decisions through the Tree of Wisdoms, if you would like a challenge, you can maybe see if you can find a path that will take fewer than 55 skills. But that's I won't say optimal, because optimal implies that I've sort of worked out a minimum, but it is at least an efficient path through the Tree of Wisdoms. It's one that I'm off the ideal path for, but it's not fatal. Most of the decisions that I'm putting in there are ones that I'd sort of do after the fact. And they did clearly get me elements of the soul that I need, so I don't think I committed myself to too many difficulties. But to see the rest of it, we will be back on Monday for more committing, more reading, and I hope to see you there. Until then, thank you for watching. Thank you for putting up with the more scrambled early morning recording, and I hope you have a nice weekend. Take care.